Stop me if you've heard this one before. Your starting quarterback sustains an unfortunate season-ending injury, and their backup has to take over. Actually, if you're a 49er fan, you probably heard this more than you'd like. But stop me if you've heard this one before. It happens twice during the same season. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and rewind it back to the draft. As the story goes, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan weren't planning on drafting a quarterback until some timely intervention from the QB coach and one of the scouts with the team. And so, Brock Purdy would become the next Mr. Irrelevant. For many late-round draft picks, there's already an uphill climb to simply make the team, let alone become an NFL starter. But for Mr. Irrelevant, that hill gets much steeper. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't happen. In fact, one of the most successful Mr. Irrelevant picks can actually say they're a Super Bowl winner. Ryan Succop was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs in 2009 and would make his way through the league until 2020 when he was signed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Under the greatest football player to ever play the game, the Buccaneers would go on to win Super Bowl 55 by beating the Chiefs 31-9. This would make Succop the first Mr. Irrelevant to play in and win a Super Bowl as an NFL starter. With all due respect though, he was a kicker. Now, don't get me wrong, kickers are very important to a football team. But Purdy was being drafted as a quarterback, arguably the most important position on a football field, and he was being drafted by a team that already had two of them. Remember that hill I mentioned earlier? Well, Purdy's hill may as well have been this steep cliff. Trey Lance was the starter, and Garoppolo was his backup, and that was not going to change. However, as John Lynch would later state in an interview, Purdy had been on their radar the entire draft. But because they already had two QBs on the roster, they had to take a chance that he would still be available as either a late round pick or as an undrafted free agent. But with rumors circulating that Minnesota and possibly Houston were also looking to go after Purdy as an undrafted free agent, Shanahan and Lynch had no choice but to scoop him up with their final pick. After impressing them in training camp, they would do something that they would not normally have done in the past. Instead of signing him to the practice squad to develop, they added him to the final 53-man roster as their third-string quarterback. So let's talk about Trey Lance for a second. There really is no way to sugarcoat this. The Niners took a huge risk on spending so much draft capital to draft him, and unfortunately in week 2 of the 2022 season, they would see that decision blow up in their face when Lance went down with an unfortunate injury. During his zone read option, Lance decided to keep the ball and make a run for it, and he was tackled by a defender, suffering a fractured ankle in the process. Suddenly, Garoppolo was no longer a backup. He was the starter. But what that also meant, though, was that Brock Purdy was elevated to the backup position. After Garoppolo took over as a starter, they would go on to lose 3 out of the next 5 games, capping off the 2-game losing streak with a 44-23 loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. However, this game would be notable for 2 reasons. One, this was the first game the 49ers played after making one of the most franchise-changing trades in team history. In exchange for a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round pick in the 2023 draft and a 5th round pick in the 2024 draft, the 49ers acquired Carolina Panthers running back Christian McCaffrey. But we'll get to him in a future episode. Number 2 though, and the whole reason why we're even here, is because this was actually the first regular season appearance of Purdy. He would come in for Garoppolo in the 4th quarter after the game was well out of hand. He would have one drive that lasted 10 plays for a total of 67 yards before ending in an interception. Let's be honest, the less said about this game the better, but it was the first time that fans were seeing him in the regular season, and that's really what we should be taking away from this game. After suffering that loss, they would win the next game against the Rams before heading into their bye week. And after the bye, the 49ers would step on the gas, and from weeks 10 through week 12, they looked unstoppable. On December 4th, in Week 13, the Miami Dolphins made their way to Levi Stadium in what was sure to be a great game. Head coach Mike McDaniel was coming home to hopefully get a win against his former team, and I'm sure many people thought the game was going to be easy for them. After all, no one knew the Niner offense better than the former offensive coordinator, and it did look like it was going to be a long day for the Niners after Miami shot out of the gate quickly by scoring a 75-yard touchdown on the first snap of the game. After the extra point was kicked, the Niners would then take the ball, and in just 8 short plays, including a quarterback sack, the team would never be the same. In the span of just a few moments in time, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, went from being a backup quarterback to being the starter. Well, technically, he was still designated as the backup. But man, he sure didn't play like one. With the game won, San Francisco could breathe a small sigh of relief. With Purdy at the helm, it looked like everything was going to be just fine. Fortunately for Purdy, this meant that he was going to go into Week 14 as the official starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. Unfortunately for Purdy, his first official start in the NFL would be against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. And just like that, the video is done. If you liked what you saw and aren't subscribed, consider doing that now. Also consider leaving a like and comment so that wonderful algorithm stays fed. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.